Recording.
Hello, everybody. I'm Steve Oliver. I am half of the co-founding team of the CannaConsultants, along with Matt Lawson, and I think we know quite a few of you. So welcome to the virtual event, and thank you very much to Ras Media for having us. I'm going to spend probably the next 15 minutes talking to you about novel foods, and then would like to welcome anybody who has any questions or who'd like to have a chat to come along to our stand on Thursday, where Matt and I will be happy to try and help to answer your questions. Novel food, regulated products. So the big question on everybody's lips is, where's this list? What we can tell you is that the FSA have been contacting people privately behind the scenes. I think we know the headline figures are there were approximately 802 applications that were made. That's now whittled down to around about 200. So there are approximately 600 people out there who have either received an email telling them that their application has failed, whether they've been given a request for additional information and they've timed out, or they've withdrawn the application. So one of the things we've been doing is asking the Food Standards Agency to produce a list of failed applications or withdrawn applications or with rejected applications. They haven't done that and they don't intend to do that. What we do know is that that information itself is filtering down to some of the boots on the ground. So trading standards, the environmental protection teams, particularly in the London area, have begun to question the compliance of certain products. That has been in the form of actual visits to bricks and mortar stores, or more commonly emails. And we're finding increasingly that local officers have a greater understanding. The disparity at the moment is that really they can't act until that list is produced. We expect some form of list to appear during September, but again, of the 200 applications, we believe that many people are going to struggle with the additional information that's been requested. And to that extent, we have allocated one of our senior account managers, John, and we're setting up a dedicated CBD novel food helpline, if you like, which is available on our website from today. And that's for inquiries which relate to applications, regulated products, whether it's by EFSA or the FSA. Interestingly, EFSA are also asking questions. They're slightly different, but I think what we're seeing is that there's a requirement for people to actually do some more work in relation to excluded groups or vulnerable groups. So it's not sufficient just to say don't use when pregnant or lactating, and it's not suitable to say consult a physician if you're using other medication, and it's not suitable to say not for use under 18s. The regulators are keen, as these are food ingredients or food supplements, to look at the risk, and it's the responsibility of the manufacturers to explain what would happen if somebody in those groups was to utilise your product. So we're seeing that. We've also seen a change in the new transparency rules from the EFSA, and whereas previously you could conduct your science, whether that's in vitro or in vivo, and then submit that with an application, what we're seeing now is that you need to provide advance notification to the EFSA of the study that you intend to undertake, where it's being undertaken, and the dates that you expect to receive that data. Now, if you don't do that, your application can be paused for 6 months. So there's a penalisation occurring here. Why are they doing that? Well, there have been a number of accusations levelled at the EFSA and the FSA about a lack of transparency. And what we know is that there'll be a period of time where an application has passed through the risk assessment phase, and all of the data contained with it will be made public. Now, it's still protected, so somebody else can't just download that information and take it off and use it in their own application, but it will be open to public scrutiny. And that public scrutiny also means competitors and other manufacturers or extractors or cultivators. The FSA have also indicated that they're going to adopt a similar policy. So there's going to be a new website where they publish not just the public summary of a dossier, but they publish the data. And that will mean potentially that scientists out there and experts can interpret that data. And it may be that there are challenges raised via the public or via industry with regard to the efficacy of that data or the application of that data. What does all this mean? The list, which will be validated or on hold, is just the first step in a long process. It's impossible for any of these products to be authorized in the short term. And why do I say that? Well, if we look at the UK, we have competing regulators. So we've got the Food Standards Agency that deal with food. We've got the Home Office, the Drugs and Firearms Licensing team, who deal with controlled drugs. And CBD products all contain, to a lesser or greater extent, elements of controlled cannabinoids. The headline groups are THC and CBN. In actual fact, there are 12 controlled cannabinoids. And what we know from the recent Ring study is that there's a huge disparity in the ability of laboratories to conduct accurate testing. In fact, looking at the results of the Ring study, there are probably only 2 or 3 laboratories that were able to adequately identify the presence of the controlled cannabinoids to a sufficient level. Coupled with that, we've got the issue of people still peddling the myth that you can have 0.2% controlled cannabinoids in a product, which is absolutely wrong. We know that it's the 1 milligram rule at the moment, and that's based on 3 exemptions, the A, B, and C. And those of us who discuss this with the Home Office know the Home Office are unhappy because that exemption, which is, was it used for ingestion, can it be easily removed, and does in any one container the total amount of controlled cannabinoids exceed 1 milligram, was actually designed for other purposes. They feel that the CBD industry has hijacked that. What does that mean? Well, we know from January of this year that the Advisory Committee on the Misuse of Drugs have set about public consultation to try and establish a contaminant level. Now, we've been talking about this for a couple of years, but what we need is a level, so that level's here, of controlled cannabinoids, whether it's a mixture of all the controlled cannabinoid level or whether it's levels for each of the individual controlled cannabinoids, below which, if you're below that level, it's a food, above which it's a drug. So a lot of us in the industry are hoping that they maintain the 1 milligram rule, but we don't know. It could be such a low level contaminant level that it excludes everything but synthetic or some very, very highly purified isolate products, but potentially it may include distillates, so a very, very narrow, broad spectrum. But certainly there is nothing to indicate that full spectrum products will ever be included below that contaminant level. Problem with distillates is, as I'm sure you're all aware, it's very difficult because of the variation in biomass and the remediation stage to actually have a consistent product. So consistency, again, is another issue for extract cultivators and extractors and the product. Another issue that the advisory committee are looking at is not just this contaminant level, but once they've established a contaminant level, if a product is below that, then you're able to deal with base ingredients. And one of the issues manufacturers in the UK have at the moment is if they're handling litres of or kilos of raw ingredient, whether that be isolate or distillate, that it almost certainly breaches the level by which it would be considered to be a narcotic. So they're operating illegally. We need a license category. So at the moment we've got this research and development category. So it's a class 1, schedule 1 drugs license. None exists for the CBD industry, and they're acutely aware of that. So the Home Office is looking to do 2 things: establish this contaminant level and then provide a license that manufacturers can apply for in order to make a compliant product. And until that happens, the FSA are in a very strange position in that they're examining these applications, which are all for unlawful products. So there's not a single lawful CBD product on the market. And I discount the ethical pharmaceutical products here because Epidiolex clearly is a product, but it's medicine. So if we look at every brand in every shop, on every website, it's clear to us that they're all unlawful, but we're trying to get to a stage where they become lawful. And the first thing the FSA are looking at is, can you make a consistent product? Can you eliminate controlled cannabinoids to an as yet unknown level? And until that level is set by the Home Office, and that probably take another year, we can't get through to authorization, because how can you authorize something as a food when it hasn't been classified as a food and it could still be considered to be a narcotic? So it's a long, long process. Positives for the industry are, one would assume the Home Office wouldn't be entering into this consultation, and the Food Standards Agency wouldn't be encouraging people to spend many tens of thousands of pounds on going through the novel food process or the regulated products application process if they didn't intend there to be a highly regulated market at the end of it. What we can say without any doubt is probably 50 to 75% of brands have not entered into that competition. So they haven't even turned up. And if you're one of those brands, I would suggest you really need to think about what you're doing, because COVID has created this umbrella of safety and reassurance and false reassurance, because in February of last year, we saw aggressive enforcement beginning, and then it stopped. And as we see the country and the world open up more and more, we'll see more trading standards officers, more food standards agency officers, more police officers taking note of this. Now, how will that take place, that enforcement? I think two ways. The easiest way is to contact the web hosts and say, you're hosting a website selling illegal products. We already know that the banks and the merchant facilities, banks in particular, are very, very hesitant to offer any support until they know that the product's lawful. But merchant facilities have taken that step, particularly tier 2 and tier 3 merchants, and they're facilitating the trade. Now, once we have this definitive list, if you're not on that list, one would assume that you won't be provided with merchant facilities. So take those simple options, and Barclays and MasterCard have already taken steps along with Visa in the States to reduce their support. And then we have boots on the ground. So we had a situation where we have half a dozen trading standards officers with a couple of food standards agencies and a police officer. We expect them to be going to town and spending 2 or 3 days looking at all the bricks and mortar shops in place. So first message, novel foods. It's a long process. Second message, enforcement is coming. Third message, and the positive message, is the enforcement is to remove people who are making no attempt or very little attempts at becoming compliant. And the good news for the consumer is trust in your product and in your brand will only increase when you are able to show that you have done that which you're required to do, notwithstanding that there is going to be more to do, much more to do in the coming months and years. So what are some of the other issues that we have? We've got people coming to this virtual event who are coming from the States and North America, Canada, and other parts of Europe. We've got this patchwork, this lack of harmonization. So we actually don't know if a product's lawful in one country and it's not. You know, we've got CBD flour, which is unlawful in the United Kingdom, but in Belgium, we can go and buy a CBD flour to smoke in a tobacconist, and it's taxed as tobacco nowhere else. But we see lack of enforcement. I'm in Greece at the moment, and all of the shops are selling CBD flour, although it's unlawful. CBD products, we've got 0.3%, we've got 1%. So we've got this disparity. And we also have, from the UK, we have a consideration of CBN as a controlled substance. So when we see COAs coming across from the States, and you've got people saying, my product's fully compliant because the THC is down at this level, they're not taking account of the CBN content. And that brings me back to the original point I made about the ring study and testing. We really need to be testing to 4 or 5 decimal points. So to actually present the consumer with a not detected or a declaration that something's 100% THC free, when in actual fact you're only testing to 1 or 2 decimal points, it's just not true. And we're also seeing an emergence of sport-targeted brands, or athlete brands, and there's THC present in these products. So there's a huge responsibility for the industry itself. And the industry itself needs to take responsibility for its actions. It needs to be honest. So we see brands saying that we've got independent testing, third-party testing. It's not, they're testing it themselves. They're using HPLC machines, which is quite sufficient for a majority cannabinoid. So for demonstrating the level of CBD in a product, that's absolutely fine. But when you want to start looking at THC and CBN levels, delta 8, delta 9, you need to start looking at alternative testing methods. So we need GCMS, we need to educate brands, because a lot of brands are relying entirely on the information that they're receiving from manufacturers. And you need to ask questions. We've got new entrants coming in who are being misled. We've got product which is inconsistent. We've got a market at the moment which is flooded with product, and the manufacturers and the sellers of those products know that they have a limited time on the market because they're waiting for the knock on the door. And that's causing price pressure. And legitimate companies who've invested a huge amount of money over the last 18 months in some cases, are finding that they are up against companies that are making huge amounts of health claims. So we've got health claims about cancer, we've got health claims about COVID, we've got health claims about anxiety, mental health. None of these are allowed. And the industry is destroying itself by continually to try and market their products with these hooks. And all they're doing is pushing the supplement market towards a medicinal market. And we know in the States, recently with the Charlotte's Web's ruling, that the FDA are saying, no, hang on, you can't go down this route because this is a medicine. We need to be very, very careful about how we market the products. You know? We don't have a recreational market in the United Kingdom, regardless of what people think. What we have is a supplement market and a medicinal market. And the medicinal market is split between specials and actual pharmaceutical drugs. And when we start to stray across, the industry faces serious consequences. So we have to be honest with ourselves. I think market share will increase for those compliant companies. I think we're going to see more white labeling, but again, we've got a new to market issue with the Food Standards Agency, which is potentially untenable, certainly unreasonable. I mean, to go off on a tangent for a moment, how can you tell somebody who's been breaking the law for an extended period of time that they can continue to break the law, but take a company who didn't break the law and has made an application that they can't market their product? It's just nonsense. And I think that will unravel. But in fairness to the Food Standards Agency, they were attempting to stymie an industry that was just exploding. So there's lots and lots happening. Huge amount of information there. I just want to encourage you to come and talk to us. If you've got concerns about your supply chain, come and talk to us. If you've got issues about your dossier, if you've had an email, if you've had a request for additional information, come and talk to us. There's some wonderful people out there. You don't just have to talk to the CannaConsultants, but we always say be careful who you listen to. But the industry is beginning to form into two groups, I would suggest. Those who seek compliance and longevity and those who want to make a quick buck. And their time for those people that want to make a quick buck is over. So thank you once again to Raz Media. I look forward to speaking to as many of you as possible on Thursday. And good luck and goodbye.